Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Brandon While Black. I'm your host, Shaney Washington, and my mission is to educate, empower, and economically develop my people. And today we have a super special guest. We have Ms. Joy Osahon. She is the author of this amazing book called This Is Not Your Typical Finding Your Purpose book. and it's truly not your typical book. And I am so excited to have Joy here. We actually met on Clubhouse. Sure, y'all have heard of that. And I was just telling her offline that we've only known each other since December, but it feels like we've known each other for at least a year or two. But just welcome to the show, Joy. And I'm just so glad to have you here and finally virtually meeting you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm beyond honored.
I'm so excited to really jump into your backstory. So, why don't you share with us a little bit about who Joy Osahon is?
So I'm a Nigerian American and I'm originally from Connecticut, but I've been living in Jersey for over 8 years. So in the daytime, I have a job. I work for a nonprofit IT prep program. So it's really in the field of workforce development as a social support manager. So I work closely with young adults and veterans, and I literally support them from the beginning to the end of our program. So sort of like being like a social worker, a teacher, like wearing multiple hats, I would say. But then really outside of that, as you mentioned, I'm an author, I'm an empowerment speaker, a blogger, and I just have a heart for women, youth, and young adults. All of these things I've been doing when it comes down to my professional work. And so I created this platform called Speak with Joy. And the mission of Speak with Joy is to empower and equip women, youth, and young adults to speak with joy despite life circumstances in the area of faith, relationships, and purpose. So a little bit about who I am.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And y'all, if y'all not following her on Instagram, you really should. She is like the epitome of motivational inspiration, speaking. And but we're gonna get to that a little later. So but definitely I really want to talk about how you really became an author, like what birthed that process for you, like what made you decide that I really want to write a book, I really want to be an author.
That's a really great question. So when it comes to answering this, I'm very transparent. So a couple of years ago, I remember, so I used to do poetry in undergrad, and that's something that many people do not know. And I used to write poetry and I used to perform my poetry. And I remember on Facebook, because it was back in the day when Facebook was hot. Everyone used to put all their business on the timeline, and I was
Of
one of
course.
them. And I remember I posted something saying that, I'm gonna have a book of poetry. And I even went further as posting a video saying that I'm gonna have a poetry book. Clearly, just my current book is it's definitely not poetry, but it was interesting because it was at that time in my life, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do a poetry book because I have some of these poems anyways. But I wasn't serious about that process because I was nowhere to even starting and I wasn't even researching. But then it was a couple years after that, and this was probably around the time I was maybe 20. So that's how young I was at that time. But then if you fast forward, there was a time where I had a journal and I would just like write things. And in that particular journal, I knew I was going to eventually change that into a book. Now, it was, of course, about like dating and relationships. But then I quickly stopped that because I realized like I was so much of a hot mess. I have no business giving anybody any type of relationship advice because I'm a hot mess, right? And so I learned to stay in my lane and to be, and to just be honest with myself and know that now is not the right time. So and with that took place after a breakup. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to write about relationship or dating. I just became single. What do I know? So after that, I never gave much thought to writing a book after that. And it really wasn't until I started blogging was when things started to unwind. So when I started blogging, which was back in 2015, I was only focused on blogging. That was it. I was like, oh, I'm a blogger. That's it. I'm not adding anything more. I'm not taking anything away from it. I was good and content. And it's funny how God works, because you tell God yes to one thing and he'll be like, all right, bet, I'm gonna have you blog. And you're like, all right, great. This is hard, but I'm good with this. He'll then tell you, well, since you said yes to blogging, I'm gonna have you speak. And so I ended up speaking at events, and pretty much like even how that came about was just interesting. And then after that, because I'm just like, all right, blogger, speaker, that's it. I don't want any more. Random people started sending me messages on social media asking me about a book. And I'm like, oh, they're, sorry, I'm not writing anything, but thanks for the words of encouragement. Because somebody was saying, like, I see you writing a book. I remember following, it was after my breakup. I remember it was Bible study, and there was this guy saying that, people are going to read about me. It was a pastor, and he prophesied over my life. I thought he meant reading was about my blogging, so I was good with blogging. Clearly looking back, I'm like, oh, he meant book or books in the future, who knows?
Right.
Um, and so it was one of those things that, just looking all around, there were so many signs that literally pointed to a book. And it was a time where I just randomly was like, okay, let me just start writing this. I didn't plan anything out as far as what each like chapter would be. I was just writing as I was going. And then in the end, I was like, this is a book. This can literally be a book. And in that process, I'm not even gonna lie, there were many moments where I was just like, I don't want to do this, I want to stop. But to even take this up a notch a little bit, I remember my senior year in high school, taking it back in high school. I remember I never ran for class president, but I was chosen to be class president. And this is what really kicked off the whole writing thing. And I remember I was called into it was our senior advisor's office. I thought I was in trouble, and I was a little goody two shoes. I was like, I can't get in trouble. And she was like, so your class voted you to be class president, and as a result, you need to write a graduation speech. I said, come again. I never ran for it. I never even told anyone anything about like writing. Like I wasn't a writer in high school. Like I didn't care. And when she told me that, I went to English class, and kid you not, in the middle of English class, something came over me. And I always tell people, with that something was God. And God literally was like, just start writing your graduation speech. And when I was done, I looked down and I was like, this is it. This is my speech. And so it's one of those things that I personally believe that with a lot of authors, there were so many hints prior to the official book, which kind of pointed towards you are bound to write. And I definitely believe that for myself, that it all started my like senior year, and pretty much, if not probably prior to that, but I just probably haven't haven't remembered it yet. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what got me started.
That's really, really cool. And we're going to circle back to that motivational speaker thing too. But that's actually really cool. And how I like listening to like some interviews of like some other authors, like a lot of the times, like that's kind of how they gotten to like publishing their first book as well, like just a whole bunch of notes, a whole bunch of journaling and stuff, and logging, and and
Mhm.
just eventually, hey, look, I got a book here. So to those people, are those entrepreneurs or future authors that may want to uh publish their first book, do you recommend that that's the route that they take in terms of like getting their book actually put together?
I'm going to say yes and no. And the reason why is that I think with the whole writing process, you have to know yourself to an extent where you know what actually works for you and what doesn't. Because a lot of people have like various types of courses. Like if you want to write a book, I will guide you towards doing it. And if somebody's interested in writing a book, it may actually work for them. And if it does, that's amazing. But but again, like there are other people on the other side where they're just saying, you know what? It doesn't work for me. I'm trying, but it's just not my cup of tea. And guess what? It is okay. And I think that for many people, You have to just be aware of yourself enough to know, is this the route that works for me? And the only way to know is to try. It's to try it out. So one of the things I do encourage people that have reached out to me and have told me, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about writing a book. Do you have any tips? And one of the things I tell them, I was like, if you can just like plan it out, put everything down on that piece of paper, or if you know want to type it up, and again, by planning, it can be your chapters, it can be just what you want to be featured in each chapter, right? It's very similar to how we've been taught to write, where you have your you know, like you have your intro, but you also have like your thesis, and then you have your supporting points. So kind of, so if you want to brainstorm in that like way, do it. But some people are like, I'm more of a free writer, and I'm just going to write, and I'm going to write until I just feel like I should stop. And it works for them. So I definitely encourage people to really begin to actually explore, but to be open-minded. So if you're the type of person where you hate structure and you're like, nope, I'm going to free write, that's fine. But also just explore the structure side of things, because you'd be surprised. It might actually work. Um, for me, I again didn't really think that this was ever going to be possible. Even to consider myself an author, I have to remind myself, like, girl, you are an author. And so it is one of those things, like, as I'm grasping that like title, um, I look back and, you know, like that's the reason why I was able to kind of, yes, I was creating chapters here and there, but I wasn't doing really in-depth planning, but I was able to get away with it because at that point I was open to however it was supposed to be written. So
Right.
yeah, definitely have an open mind and be okay with exploring and trying things. And if you try it and if it works, great, stick with it. But if you try it out and it doesn't work, that's fine. Try like another route.
So so I know that and which you kind of alluded to it, like a lot of people are like really in their heads, like at first, like thinking about not so much the content of the book, but what am I going to write about?
Yes.
And they get so caught up on that first step of what am I going to write about, that they don't actually do anything. Or you get the ones that they have so many ideas about what they want to write about
Yes.
and they just can't pick one. So I mean, so what do you say to those that actually have like a whole bunch of different ideas? Like how do they narrow it down to actually picking one and just going with it?
That's a really good question. And I've noticed that too, that there are a lot of people that are like, listen, I could write about anything. I just don't know where to start. So I would advise people to I I I think this is where you have to have a mirror up and you have to look at yourself. And looking yourself, of course, not just the flesh, but you know, you have to look at your inner depth being and ask yourself, what is currently resonating with you at this particular hour of your life? Very similar to how at one point I was like journaling my book years ago after a breakup. And I realized, like, girl, you're a hot mess. You don't have no business writing about this now. Now, if I was to pick that up and, you know, say, hey, guess what? I'm going to read it, edit it, and guess what? And pretty much I'm going to make this decision to write it out, then hey, that's fine because I have years of experience now under my belt. And these like experiences are gems that I think will be helpful in a book. So I will tell anyone that's kind of trying to figure out where to start. You have to ask yourself, one, are you ready to write what, you know, like if you have a particular idea, are you ready to write about it? Because at times people will write only to realize that like they're not ready to write about this topic, because there are certain things that people may want to write about that it's still, you know, like they are still in the process of healing from it. And there are
Right.
some times where you need to heal behind closed doors just before you start to write about something outwardly, which is fine because even with that healing process can be included in your book. So kind of figuring out like just which one resonates with you the most. I would also encourage somebody that based off of the actual topics that they have, they should write out why they want to write about it.
Mm.
And typically, just the one that you have the most meat as to why you want to write about that particular topic, that's the topic you probably should write about first. Just because it resonates with you the most, it means the most to you. And it's probably something that you should get out first anyways, which is usually a person's niche. I never thought that my niche would be the girl that talks about purpose, right? People think of Speak with Joy. Oh yeah, like that's the girl that talks about purpose and using your gift and da 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 da. And I thought I would be like a relationship person, even though
Right.
I'm not a relationship coach. I'm far from it. I'm still learning. But it is one of those things where when you find out your why, as per your topic, it's going to be the one that's going to drive you further. And it doesn't make the writing process easier because it's still hard, but it will make starting a lot easier.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. So, okay, so outside of the actual content of the book, right? What are the must-haves that you need to actually have a functioning real life book in front of you at the end of the process? Like what are the must-haves outside of the actual content?
Yes. So first and foremost, you have to have money. You have to
Hey,
have
speak on
money.
it.
Like, let's be real about it, because when I was doing my research and in my process, no one told me the amount of money it was going to take to write a book. And yes, there are different apps like I was using for like the just it was the inside of my book design was Fiverr, and the guy was great. He was cheap, right? But if I was to write another book, I would probably put a little bit more money towards the cover design, what inside of it, just because I'm a reader and I like quality stuff. And so you have to have money because, and again, like you don't have to spend just $5,000 on writing a book. No, I wrote my book and I can share this with about $1,000, probably a little bit less than that, which
Mhm.
includes, printing out books for people to read it and to actually review, which I could have cut the cost in that. But so you want to have money and you want to make sure that you have a designer, an outward designer, a cover designer. That's good. That's the bulk where my money went to, and I I am okay with that. I do not regret that at all. Because I, again, as an avid reader, when I go into Barnes and Noble, or when I was going to Barnes and Noble because of this pandemic, I looked at covers. It was the covers that honestly really enticed me. And so everyone's trying to be the cheap route of things, but again, you get your money's worth. And so to really have an actual book, you need money. And like that's the only thing I'm going to just harbor on, because like once you have the money, things slowly start to fall in place, right? Like with the money, you're able to hire somebody to be an editor, right? But you also want to make sure that you have a decent editor, because some people, I had two editors. The first editor, she was okay, but there was a lot of mistakes made. And after I edited something, I had to read my book again, and I was like, the amount I paid, which again, I went the cheap route, but then I had to hire somebody else, and she was an author herself. So it worked and she understood
All
what I
right.
needed. And so it is one of those things, once you have a money, you can have somebody do your design covers inside and out and the spine of the book, somebody editing it. Yeah, like I just think the money piece of it. But again, you don't have to break a bank, but you also want to make sure that you're budgeting, and that when you are reaching out to people to do your book and to help and to create that, like they're legit, because that's the hard part. So money, and then also I'm going to throw something in, you need wisdom. Wisdom is applied knowledge. So if somebody's listening to this, you can listen to it all you want and you can get knowledge, but wisdom is applying what's being said. So don't just be so quick to run the cheap route because it's convenient,
Right.
because everyone cheap isn't always good quality. And so what you put in is what you get out. And wisdom will tell you, okay, if you have a cheaper route, it's still good. And so I was fortunate with the editor that I used. I was expecting her to charge me way more than what she charged me. And she was only like $20 more, only $20 more than the first editor I had. I was like, come on, God,
Wow.
you want this book out, because I was expecting this girl to charge me almost like 1,000 and some change,
Mhm.
but she didn't.
Girl. Okay. Well, and that's actually not something that you hear in like when these authors are being interviewed and stuff. Like they always talk about the process and stuff, but they never say, "Look, I had to break bread to, make this quality and make it, all nice and stuff, and as a representation of myself, and my because really, I mean, because you're a brand, as an author, you are a brand, you're a personal brand, at that point, once you start putting it out, and then you're doing promos and shows and all of that stuff around it. So yeah, I definitely could get behind that. So what about the actual like process of getting published? Like what is the process of that? So like so you have a lot of people who self-publish, they just do the ebook, but you actually have a paperback uh you have paperback cover. So how was that process?
So it was really interesting. Interesting was I was definitely fortunate to have another author at that time. He was giving me tips. And it was super helpful. So I ended up going the Amazon route. And so here's the thing with Amazon versus Barnes and Noble. So there's pros and cons to them. I'm not sponsored by either, so I can tell you all the truth.
Okay.
So
Give us the tea.
Amazon is they take more money out of your actual like royalty when somebody purchased a book. Barnes and Noble takes less than Amazon, so you get more back if you were to go the paperback route through Barnes and Noble. However, when there are issues, you can't call Barnes and Nobles for them to fix it. I mean, you can call them, but they always will direct you to it, just to their email. With Amazon, when you have any issues with the printing, with the sizing, with making sure everything is running smoothly, they have a number that honestly you can call, which it is one of those things that I think as an author, because you have to look at yourself, like you mentioned, like a brand and you're technically an entrepreneur, you want to have access to where your source is coming from. If you don't have access, it makes it very difficult and it makes it extremely frustrating. So if you're doing the paperback route, you want to be very mindful as to what you choose. Like, I don't want to tell anyone to choose this over that. I'm going to treat this like politics. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But again, you want to kind of weigh out what it is that you need. Many people can order like books and stuff and then, sell it from there, which is easier as well. But so I went the Amazon route. So in the future, if I was to write a book, I'm definitely open to exploring like different other, like just other options in which, if there's just like a company where I can just send the draft of not the draft, but the final draft of the book where they can do the printing, then that's fine. But the only thing with Amazon and also with Barnes and Nobles is that it's free. It's free for you to post the book on their thing. And if you want people to have the book mailed out to them. And with Amazon, people have Amazon Prime. So people are like, oh, I'm going to add this book to anything that I'm purchasing. So I got a lot of that from people. They're like, oh, girl, I'm about to add your book to what I'm purchasing. Right. So it is one of those things that with that process, you kind of have to figure out just what it is that you need. I definitely think having an ebook is great. But again, I'm a reader. I like to touch my book and I like to flip through the pages. I like to write notes in it, so on and so forth. So I will tell people that if you are doing the Amazon or Barnes and Noble route, it is free. Again, there's probably other ways that if somebody wants to send their book to be printed out. But I would tell people to just make sure you're doing your research and also research like what is the royalty, right? And especially when it comes into the pricing point of your book. I was very generous with the pricing point of my first book. Which again, if I was to write something in the future, will I increase the pricing of it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Right. But yeah, like I would tell people just do your research. But yeah, so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, it's free if you want the paperback.
Yes. Okay. First of all, thank you for dropping that gem. I think that that's super valuable for all of the future authors out there. So I said we were going to come back to it. So I do want to circle back
Mhm.
to the motivational speaking thing. So I feel like people who are authors or people who are motivational speakers, like it kind of goes hand in hand, like it's like a vice versa thing. So for you, did it just kind of fall in your lap? Because you said it was an interesting story about the motivational speaking aspect of your brand. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So first of all, I was not searching for it. Again, when I tell people I was content with just blogging at that time, I was content. I didn't want to add anything else on my plate. I was like, listen, I'm blogging and I'm working. Lord, how I'm overwhelmed. It's a lot. And so I remember so I live in Jersey, and at that time there was a lady. She used to be a hall director at the school I went to for undergrad and grad. She she and I are we are social media friends. And she sends me a Facebook message, and she's like, "Hey, Joy, there is this conference taking place in Jersey. They're looking for speakers. You should apply." Now, at that moment, I literally was like, "Oh, thanks for sharing." I didn't really give great like thought to it. Mind you, I was posting videos here and there, giving people words of encouragement, but I never thought to present. And this again was probably a couple months after my breakup, and I was like, "You know what? I learned a lot in this like period of time." And it's a women's empowerment conference. Listen, we all deal with some type of relationship issue.
Yes.
Let me apply, and I got a yes from it. And so how it fell under my lap, well, on my lap was someone just they literally sent me the information. That is why at times where when you do things and you do it consistently, you can't do this thing alone. There are people that are
Right.
going to help you. Yes, there are people that clearly we seek that will help us if we ask them something, but there are people who come out of nowhere and they said, "Hey, I thought about you just for this opportunity. I think you should look into it." And a lot of the times we are quick to say no because it's not packaged the way we like, or we want to find it ourselves and we miss out on an opportunity. So I literally told her, "Sure, why not?" And then I did it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was scared, but I was like, "I like this." And then after that, it slowly started coming in, slowly but surely. So that's why I tell people, whatever you do, just do it because people see you doing it. And eventually, and again, branding isn't just like the aesthetics and the colors and stuff. With branding comes with consistency. So if people think about you, what do they think about when they think about
Exactly.
you? When they're looking at random opportunities, random emails that's coming into their desk, are they thinking like, wait, you would be good at it? Like I've had people tell me, "Hey, Joy, I brought your name up to be a possible speaker at various events and stuff like that." Right now, whether or not I've ever gotten the response back from them, but the fact that people consider me shows that, okay, people are paying attention.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it kind of came about. And since then, it was like, dang, another thing added on my list. Fell for the trap.
You got this. You got this.
Yes.
You drinking all the entrepreneur Kool-Aid. You drinking all of it. So, okay, so with it, so keeping kind of like on topic with the motivational speaking, I was telling y'all how y'all need to follow Joy on Instagram. I have been blessed to be in on a few of her lives, and Joy really be spitting fire, and really not in like those weird passive aggressive like entrepreneurs that's like trying to like light a fire under your butt. Like I feel like they're weird when they do that. But when you get on Joy's live, she's all nice and motivational and inspirational and asking questions and like just really coming from a place of warmth and truly wanting you to win. Like, how did you use that? like your motivational speaking and of course like your book is about purpose and things like that. How did you use your voice to really grow your following like on social media?
That's an excellent question. And thanks that, forgive me the compliment of spitting fire. I be thinking like, "Oh, just was I a little bit too harsh?" Like I'm always hard on myself when I talk.
No,
Especially because
ma'am.
I tend to feel very strong and passionate about certain things. But so one of the things when it comes to using your voice, when it's, whether it's using your voice, um, whether it's creating a book, whether it's going into speaking, and even tying that into like whether you have a job, you have to be unapologetic about it. And this has been an area that I can be very candid with you, I've struggled greatly in, right? Confidence is something that is still an on like going thing. But I realized based off of the work that I've done with my job and my career is words matter.
Yes.
That's something I have learned working with youth, working in shelters, working in different programs, that words do matter. If you tell a little child growing up for the rest of their life, you can actually do it, like no one's going to stop you. Do you know what that child's going to grow up doing? A lot of things because they actually believe in themselves. And so once I realized, based off of the population that I work with, like, yo, if I can motivate you to actually behave in school and you slowly making this change, huh? I could kind of sort of change the world a little bit, right? Or again, like I
Yeah.
can change an environment, I can change a community. And so it is one of those things that from my experiences helped really cultivate that. And the experiences, like the good, of course, like hearing all of the success stories, but also the bad. Because in reality, I like to talk in a way in which like really in which that I would be open to receiving it. Because again, like you mentioned, a lot of the times, many entrepreneurs talk in a way where it's like, yo, it sounds good, but I can't relate to it.
Right.
I just can't get into it. You can be a great person, a great heart, but they just not feeling it, right? And
Right.
so um I think being in the industry that I've worked in, I've had no choice but to speak with people from all types of, just of life, right? So speaking with the child, speaking with the parent, speaking with somebody that's having a crisis, speaking with somebody that's homeless, speaking with all of that sort. So at this point, what you bring and what you show can't really shock me or throw me off. And where I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? Because there's value in everyone. And once I realized that every single person had value, I'm like, wow, you need to realize the value that you have. And of course, the obvious, being Black and being a woman. I would say that my experience in the work field has not been the best. I can still think back to working in one of the first real jobs I've ever had undergrad. And I was getting eaten alive by another Black woman, and pretty much how I felt. And it just kind of made me feel so scared in my like career after that. But I definitely thank God for healing. I realized then and there just the power of words to people. How words can really make people feel like they shouldn't move, they shouldn't operate, they shouldn't do any of those things. And so all of that cultivated together where it was one of those things where it allowed me to write the book I wrote. Anyone who's a part of my who's part of my email list, I actually wrote for the year 2021 as my word. It can be somebody's word if they want it. This is the year of merging and merging of all of the experiences, personal and professional experiences, being merged in with being just with being a speaker, with being a blogger, with being and with also being an author. And so all of those things is part of who I am. It's my voice. So am I bringing my author self to my job? I sure am. When at my job, anytime we have an orientation with trainees that want to be a part of our program, am I mentioning my book? Absolutely. Does everybody at my job at our national headquarters know the book I wrote? They sure do because I post that on LinkedIn. And the reason why is that it's part of who I am. And once
Right.
you realize this is literally who you are, it becomes your voice authentically. Many people will motivate you on social media, but you're around them and they have nothing positive to say
Right.
offline. And that's a problem. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
Oh, well, that was a mouthful, but no, that was great. So you host rooms on Clubhouse as well. So I mean, and really the rooms that you host are similar to what you speak about on your lives. So um, tell us about some of the rooms that you host on there.
Yeah, so I'm a new hosting. And I say new because I didn't want to do it. But again, how just how everything came about is just so interesting. Like certain people was like, girl, you need to host the room. And I'm just like, again, I don't want nothing else on my table. I'm good, I'm full. But so I started a room that was really talking about, writing a book. And it was one of those things where I realized like fear stops people a lot. This fear of being judged, the fear of money, trying to figure all of that out. A lot of the times people won't even write something because they're so focused on the cost when they haven't even started writing. And it's like, that's backwards. You should write first, and trust me when I tell you, the money and all these things are going to come into play. You're going to
Right.
connect with people that's going to give you tips, advice. Shoot, they may even give you money to help you publish everything. So it was one of those things that once I started that room and it was titled Help, I'm Afraid to Write a Book, I didn't decide, after that, I decided to host another room the following week, which was more geared towards help. I really don't know. I do not know what my purpose is. And so I realized like this could be like a help series, where maybe it's not something I do every week. Maybe it's twice a month, where like we're talking about just about topics where people need help with. And whether it's a teachable moment where it's like, listen, I have these notes, I'm going to share with you guys what I believe is to be helpful, or maybe it's having a panel and asking people different questions and their experiences. But I realized that everyone needs help in something.
Yeah.
And with Clubhouse is an amazing app, but what happens is that people should leave feeling like they gained something from it.
Yes.
And a lot of the times I've left many rooms where I'm just like, I ain't gained anything but but wasted time, right? So
Right.
being intentional with the rooms, with like who you have moderating. So we'll see what the future may hold. We'll see.
Okay. But I think that Clubhouse is a great way to also build your list
Mhm.
as well. Especially like when you're hosting the rooms, or if you're like a moderator or something. I think that that's a great way to start. Maybe not start, but to continue to like build your tribe. And what do you think are some of the best ways to kind of network on Clubhouse, since it's such a new app? Well, I'm saying such a new, it feels like it's been around forever,
Yeah.
but like a lot of people be in these rooms, and of course they have like the super rooms that have 1,000+ people in it,
Mhm.
and like you'll raise your hand and you'll never make it to the stage because there's so many people raising their hand.
Yeah.
Like how do you think the best way to navigate around networking off of Clubhouse?
So first and foremost, if you are starting off new and you don't feel comfortable hosting a room, speaking up. Speak up, share your voice, share your stories, whatever practices, or if there's certain practices that you've done, if there's any tips you may want to share, this is the time for you to share it. It's much easier said than done, I admit, because I have my moments where I'm just like, I don't want to say nothing, I'm scared. But you'd be surprised. Like part of networking is that there are people that are going to listen to what you have to say, and they're going to be like, yo, she was saying some real stuff. Let me go on her Instagram or her Twitter, and I'm going to send her a message and tell her like, listen, everything you said really resonated with me. Or if you're in the audience, and if something that somebody says resonates with you, or if they have a program, if you have a question, if you want to learn more about what they do not hesitate to follow them. Do not hesitate to send them a message and follow up with them. Um, because you'd be surprised what virtually network can lead. It can lead to different types of collaborations. It can lead to partnerships, so on and so forth. So if you're listening, if you don't feel comfortable speaking, then listen intentionally and take notes. And, again, if there's something in particular that somebody mentioned, you better mention that in whatever follow-up message you send them. Very similar to when you interview for a job. And if you're interviewing for a job and the company mentions something that they specialize in that you may not find on their website, you mention that of course in the email. So doing that, but also, even if you don't feel comfortable speaking, I'm going to task you with the goal to speak at least once, because you never know what sharing your ideas, sharing your wins and your losses can do for somebody else. And you never know who's in the room. And you can have somebody in the room where they may only have 3 followers, but yet they have so much connections, so many people in their network, and also a wealth of knowledge. So do not let these numbers fool you into believing and thinking that, okay, somebody has a large following. Just what they say has to be important. And yes, there is always, not always, but at times there's a correlation. But do not, like, if there's a topic if there's a topic on Clubhouse that you're like, wow, this is my it topic, but you only see 6 people, you better talk like you're speaking to 600 people, because you don't know who those 6 people know. So, yeah.
Love it. Love it. And I definitely agree with that. Okay. So for those entrepreneurs, now you didn't think I was going to let you get off here and not talk about purpose.
Oh,
For
my specialty topic.
gotta let you talk about your jam. So for those entrepreneurs, just in any industry who are working, let's say they're working like a 9 to 5 that they hate, and they just like, they know they want to be an entrepreneur, but they just don't quite know what direction that their life is going in right now to like make a change like that. What advice do you have for them on truly finding their purpose and walking in their purpose?
So I'm going to do a plug-in. So if you're struggling, go on Amazon. You can
Get
purchase
the
my book. This
book.
is not your typical Finding Your Purpose book, because it's one of those things that people have to really keep in mind, that purpose is not just about you, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, you have a product that you're trying to sell. And at times it should be selling to help people, but we know people sell things for their own gain and they don't really care about their consumer. But I think if there's an entrepreneur, if you don't hate your 9 to 5, first of all, this is going to be unpopular belief. And some people may like this, some people may not. Everyone is not meant to go into entrepreneurship full time. There are some people who are blessed and fortunate to do it, but some people may have to do it where they work a 9 to 5 type of job, and then on the side they do what they do.
Say it louder for
Um,
the people in the back.
right, right, because there's this push where everyone is like, well, if you want to go into entrepreneurship, you gotta do it full time. Da, da, da. If you're not doing full time, like, you're not doing anything with your life, and that's false. First of all, who says you have to do that? There's so many people, and of course, when you go on social media, it may seem like people are doing that, but everyone is not,
They're not.
right? Because at the end of the day, like, you still have to make a living. Now, if you're fortunate enough to do it full time, kudos to you. But if not, and you're struggling and you're trying to figure out your purpose in pretty much in all of this, you want to always go back to your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to sell this particular product? Who do you want to help? And why do you want to help them? A lot of the times people get so caught up trying to find this one thing that they don't make any moves. They're not living intentionally. They don't want to serve. So if somebody's saying, like, okay, I want to go into entrepreneurship and I want to sell jewelry. I'm looking to selling jewelry, but I don't know if I should do it. I don't know. Oh my gosh, I hate my baking job, but again, I'm making mad money. Maybe, the actual jewelry job can be what it is that you do. But then again, there's a deeper reason why you may want to make sure that, like, every woman has your jewelry line on and is rocking it, because the fact that you want her to grow in confidence, right? Because a lot of the times with entrepreneurship, we there's times we could put ourselves in a box and we're like, I'm only doing this. Very similar to I'm only blogging, I'm not doing more. And years later, I'm doing more. So I will say, if you're struggling in this area, exploring your why are you trying to do this product? And especially your target audience, why are you targeting them? And that is going to require you to do a lot of introspective looking as to who you are, just from your experiences, your wins and your loss. But do not allow finding your purpose to hinder you from starting. Keep going. And again, your purpose and everything that you're passionate about, it changes over time. We change over time. And so as we change and we grow and mature, everything we put our hands on follows suit as well.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that advice. I love that advice. So, again, tell people where they could go buy the book.
You can purchase This Is Not Your Typical Finding Your Purpose book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Yes. Please go cop that today. So, what do you have next? Will you have any other projects coming up that we should know about? Be on the lookout for.
So if you follow me on Instagram, Speak with Joy, I have a couple of speaking engagements coming up, of course, virtually. So I've been just kind of focused on that. And then if you go to my website, speakwithjoy.net, and you subscribe to my site, I definitely dish out all of the juice as to what I'm doing next. So that's a way to kind of, it's about growing my following, like you mentioned. Exactly. So yeah, so more and so doing different types of partnerships and collaborations. Oh, but I can share this with you. So I partnered up with a menstrual cycle brand called Diva Cups. Mm-hmm. And so I'm currently waiting to work with I'm waiting to work with other organizations to have like an educational program kind of around healthy periods, right? Because there's a lot of period poverty going on. And I was a public health major and a women's studies major. So this is the year of merging. And so having a partnership where I can give them the free products as well as talk about it is what is the major thing that's next on my list for next month.
Oh, that's really cool. Go ahead, Joy.
Thanks, girl.
You out here merging and stuff, like you said.
Hashtag merge 2021.
I love it. Well, Joy, thank you so much for your time and from taking time out of your busy schedule and for sharing this knowledge that they can use for wisdom later on. And just thank you so much again. Just thank you.
Thanks for having me. I have fun. And I'm so honored to be on your platform.